Hello students, Mahayana and Hinayana. We are at the end of the topic Buddhism, and after that we will continue the topic with talking something about Hinduism, that what was happening to Hinduism at that time, which is the oldest religion of India. So we switch over to Mahayana and Hinayana. After the Nibna of Buddha, his followers were divided into two sections, into two sects. One was known as Mahayana and the other is known as the Hinayana. Mahayana, you can call it a new thinking, a new order, or Hinayana, you can call it the old one. Mahayana is also termed as, by the historians, it is termed as the a great vehicle, and the Hinayana is also known as the lesser vehicle, or the lower, or the lesser, smaller, lesser vehicle. Now about Mahayana. In Mahayana, they were Buddhist, no doubt. They believed in the teachings of Buddha, but they decided to work as saviors, about which we discussed in the previous lecture. They decided to work as the saviors, means they will attain enlightenment, they will attain all the knowledge. Enlightenment, you know, we have discussed it, but not for themselves, but for the protection and for the welfare of the society as a whole. And they will keep in their heart, they will keep in their mind the thing that was taught by, that was preached by Buddha, that was compassion. They will be compassionate. They will have a soft corner for the people, for the society. They will act as saviors and they will save the society. They will make society very beautiful. They will make society a very ideal society, as was taught by Buddha. So this sect was known as Mahayana. And the second sect is known as the Hinayana. And the Hinayana sect, it is known as lesser vehicle. They believed in old religious scriptures, that is, they will attain enlightenment not for the society but for themselves, for their own self good, to develop their own self good. They will adopt Buddhism and they will attain enlightenment. So this was Hinayana, and they asked the people that don't call them Hinayana, except because they lived in the area which is known as Himalayas at that time, and they adopted another term, that is Thir, that we should not be called Hinayana because Hin is a smaller one. Thias, okay? So the Mahayana and Hinayana, these were the two sects. After Buddha got a Nibna, they were divided into two, and like this Buddhism flourished. One group, Mahayana, they began to look after for the society, look after the growth and development of the society by attaining enlightenment, and the other one, the Hinayana, they worked to attain themselves enlightenment and to work for themselves only, for their good only. Right? Now we switch over to Hinduism. Here our Buddha chapter, the chapter based on Buddhism is ended, the topic is ended. Now what was happening to Hinduism, which is such an old religion of India? And in the previous lectures we discussed that Buddhism and Jainism developed because there were so many evils in Hinduism. There were so many superstitions, there were so many blind faiths, so many people adopted Buddhism and Jainism. Even after the Nibna of Buddha, even Buddhism, some practices entered that Buddha never accepted. Correct? So now we come to the Puranic tradition. Purans. I told you, we discussed earlier that women, untouchables, so-called untouchables, the last categories of the society, they were not allowed to read or even touch the Vedas. Correct? But they were allowed to read Puranas, Puran, which we call in Hindi, Puran. So old texts of the Hindus. So Puran could be studied by the so-called untouchables, by the so-called lower sections of the society, and even by the women, by the females. So the Puranic tradition said that there was growth of temples, different places, different sites, they were selected for temples, and different types of temples were built at that time. You must have learnt about the rock architecture, about the rock temples, Ajanta, Ellora, a temple at Mahabalipuram, that is Tamil Nadu. A number of Hindu temples came up. Just now we talked of Mahayana, that people wanted to serve as saviors. So in the Puranic text, it is mentioned that in India, many gods, they took incarnation as saviors, like Ram, Krishna. There are 10 avatars of Vishnu, and they acted as saviors whenever there was something wrong in the world, whenever there were evils. So any of the god, particularly the names that have been mentioned are Vishnu, Shiva, all these, and goddess, mother goddess. So they have taken incarnations and they have saved the world, they have saved the people from all the ills, from all the evils. So they acted as saviors. So during this period, Hindus, they had two sections to worship, Vaishnavism and Shaivism. Vaishnavism sect, it worshipped Vishnu, and Shaivism sect, it worshipped Shiva. A number of temples were built, and the temples, they had only one gateway, like in the previous buildings we discussed about 4 gateways. They had only one gateway, and there was a Garbhagriha, that where the main deity or the main image of the god or goddess was placed, that was called Garbhagriha. And there was only one gate. And in the temples, the roof that can be called a shikhar, a very huge structure was made on the temples, so that people coming from the far or from very distant places, they could see that there is a temple. Or if the shikhar was not so big, then the gateways were built in massive way. Then there was a particular shrine where people used to assemble, and there was system of mandap. And the mandap was a hall where people used to stay for prayer. Correct? So these types of temple, particular in the beginning, temples were not very complex. They were very simple, having a garbhagriha, having a shikhar, having a gateway, and having a mandap. Later, some complexities, some complex structures were built, and some of the temples were built with one single stone. We have heard the temple at Kailashnath. We have heard so many other statues and temples that were made of single stone. So temple building was a very important activity that was going on. After constructing a temple with a single stone, after constructing a temple with all the mandapas, garbhagriha, shikhar, etc., an architecturist, a builder used to say, how did I made it? It is written in a copper plate in an inscription. How did it made it? Means the builder is very wonderstruck, is surprised when the whole temple is built, that how did I build it? So they could not know all these skills, but they were built. So like this topic is over. Then can we see everything through this? Because in yesterday's lecture we discussed that how stones were studied by the historians. It is not easy to study stone, then copying them and giving us information about it. So we discussed that the historians of that time, they studied the stones, whatever pictures or whatever carving was there, and then they read the hagiography, that is the biographies of the saints, the hagiographies also, and then they matched. Whatever was matching with the hagiography, they gave us, and whatever was not matching with the hagiography with the stones, that information was not given to us. So can we see everything? No, we cannot see everything. For example, I told you that in the different structures, chaityas, viharas, stupas, where the image of Buddha should be there, that place is left empty. So we cannot say everything. That is symbolic that there must be Buddha. Yesterday we discussed in detail about trees, about wheel, about stupa, about serpent figure, people tree, etc. So everything could not be told to us, because it is not easy to construct history only by watching the different objects and giving us the correct information. Then grappling with the unfamiliar. When Europeans came to India, they were not happy to see the Indian architecture, not happy, and particularly in some instances they were scared of watching the different images, so many hands of the gods. In every hand they are carrying something. Correct? The Narsimha avatar of Vishnu, the one part of the body is of a lion and the other part of the body is of a human being. So they were very surprised to see all this. Then in Hinduism, for certain gods there were certain symbols, like for Shiva there was symbol of Shivling. So different types of symbols were there. Some of the things they were unfamiliar also at that time. Everything could not be explained. Like in your textbook, figure 4.30, you can see that at Mahabalipuram, images have been made. A very big structure of Buddha is there. Mahabalipuram it is in Tamil Nadu, and it is a work of our cultural heritage. You can see figure 4.30, where there is a cleft. The two stones are there, and there is a cleft left in between the two stones, between the two there is a cleft. Now this cleft is imagined in different ways by the different archaeologists or by the different historians. Some of the archaeologists, some of the historians say that this cleft is left for Ganga, the holy river Ganga, because it is in our Hindu mythology that the holy river Ganga have been originated from heaven. So that is why this cleft is left. But the other group of historians, they believe that this is the place that signifies an incident that when the war of Mahabharata was to be started, Arjun went here, and went here for penance. Penance means accepting his whatever wrong he has done, accepting all the wrong deeds, as well as praying the god to give him godly weapons so that he could fight the Mahabharata war and he could also win the war. So this cleft is described in different ways by different historians. So while studying history, we face all these challenges, we face all these problems, that if the story of the stone, if the story of the hagiography, written in the hagiography, if they do not match, then what will we do? Then we will go through the philosophies, we will go through the discussions and debates that are there between the different archaeologists, between the different historians. In the beginning, Britishers, they considered their craft, their sculpturists, their sculptures as very superior, but Indian architecture as very inferior. But later they came to know that, when they saw the images, the huge images, like in yesterday's lecture we discussed that they had only seen the Greek gods. They are like simple men, simple human beings. But when they saw, and they were huge structures also, but when they saw, like Mahabalipuram, when they saw huge structures of Buddha, huge structures of different gods and goddesses in India, after some time they realized that no, Indian architecture was very, very remarkable. It is very, very sophisticated. And what to talk of the rock architecture, Ajanta Ellora is a very good example of it. You can recall the Ajanta Ellora at Maharashtra, and these are the temples, these are the cave examples of the cave architecture. Every architecture is constructed from bottom to top. It is only the rock architecture that is constructed from top to bottom. Carvers, they go on the top, and they by doing carving they come at the bottom. So this is remarkable. This is a very good achievement on the credit of India. So like this we complete our chapter 4 of your first book. Prepare your notes. It was a very interesting story of different thinkers, beliefs and buildings. Go through all the pictures given in NCERT. We will start the second book, and we will meet again with a new energy and with new enthusiasm and something to discover new for you. Till then, a very goodbye from me.